Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, we're going to draw a comic book style eye, and I'm just going to do it step by step so you can follow along. And what I like to first do is get the perimeter shape in place. So that's what you see me doing here, just drawing like the edging of the eye and kind of defining the type of shape that I want to see. And with the comic style eye, it's just a little more accentuated than a regular eye, than a realistic eye, obviously. And I'll kind of show you a few of the differences or talk about the differences, I guess, as I illustrate through this. But essentially, when you do that, the bottom lid of the eye, it's going to be real prevalent in the realistic eye that there's that significant edging to the bottom of the eye, and that also that it converges up under the top of the eyelid. Not that the two lines just meet. So whenever you draw comic or animated styles, they look very much like they just meet to a point to the back of the eye. Which is fine if that's what you're after, but you just need to be aware that you're going to kind of give up a little bit of realism when you make it look just too much like lines converging. If you think about it more that the one area of the skin is rotating and meeting up to the other, you can generally make it look a little more realistic. Now, likewise with the iris is about 1/3 the width of the eye. Here you see I made it quite a bit larger. I'm also showing you how if you put the pupil too high up, you get a very lazy kind of look to the eye, a very tired, sleepy look. Also, if you leave too much white to either side of the iris, you're going to convey more, fear or excitement, things like that. So you just need to be very aware of the actual placement of the iris and the pupil and all that, and the size relationship too. But you can actually get away with making it larger based on comic or animated styles. So that I don't think is as important, but you do want to be very aware of the placement based on the emotion that you're trying to convey in the eye. So the eye is a very big indicator of emotion and feeling. So you got to be pretty specific with that placement. Okay, so now once I get to about this stage, I want to start thinking about the height and the depth, I guess, of the top eyelid. Reason being, if I don't start thinking about the depth of the eyelid and the brow of the character, I really won't know the next step, which is the drop shadow that I want to place on the iris. Keep in mind too that if you're drawing a male character, it's just going to be a little bit more angular like that, where the female characters are going to typically have a little bit more rounded and fluid lines to the eye construction. So here as I add that drop shadow in, I can get a good idea of how much depth I want to convey with that. So the bigger obviously the shadow on the iris, the more depth that you're trying to convey with that top eyelid and the brow. Keep in mind too, the glare is almost always kind of attached to the drop shadow. So think of the eye as a very rounded spherical object, and like other spherical objects that you study, you almost notice that wherever the peak of the shadow is, it's almost accompanied by a glare or a highlight. Not always, but in very glossy, wet objects, it tends to be the truth. So here I'm getting the eyelid in, and I want to show you the difference of a realistic eye. You're going to have more of these tapered thick to thin points. In a comic or animated style, it's all going to kind of group together. Now past that, the other thing to think about is when doing a realistic eye, generally the eyelashes will come down and in front of the eye, and I'll show you that here in a second. So as I take this back, they're not just simply going to taper upward, they're actually going to come down in front of the eye and point back up. Likewise, if you're trying to get a realistic eye, you actually want to show the reflection of those eyelashes in the iris. But that's not what we're going for here. We're going to go with a more animated comic style. So I am going to keep the eyelashes grouped together, and I'll just do a little bit of kind of style choice and do these tiny little separations and changes in direction of the eyelashes. Now, one of the reasons why I think it's important to simplify the work like this is because you can draw it more consistently, quicker, and consistently throughout a book. So if you're doing like sequential storytelling, it makes sense, I think, to simplify certain areas of the work. And this is really why I think that this has become so popular in comics over the years, because for one, it translates well from larger shots to smaller shots. It's a lot easier to interpret for size reduction, for printing and all that, but really just drawing it smaller or larger, this is really easy to interpret. Where if you start to do all the little details of the eyes and the little texture in the iris, the tiny little eyelashes everywhere, it becomes a little bit tricky to do that effectively. So simplifying areas of the work I think is really important, especially for being a comic book illustrator. So with the brow here, I typically will just do this thick to thin version. It's almost like a stretched out comma, I guess. And I show the plane change of where it shifts on that little peak or whatever, where it goes up. It does a plane change to the downward right, and it tapers out even further. And this is probably, again, an oversimplification of an eyebrow, but things like this make it easier to draw and just a lot quicker to produce throughout, an entirety of a book and all these different character types and things like that. So here I'll do a little bit more stylization to the eyelashes, just kind of tweaking it and trying to bring it out a little bit more. But hopefully you can see too that even though this was sped up 2 times, I think, it's still a quick and easy process to do. It's not something that takes all day for me to render or something like that. And then, pretty much at this stage, I'm ready to start inking it. I'll add in some little texture lines just to kind of help push the separation from the iris to the white part of the eye and show a little bit of roundedness to the form. But that's really it. I pretty much call it done at this point, and I would start adding some ink. So hopefully you found this little demonstration to be fun and informative. I'd love to know what you think in the comments section below, as well as what you'd like to see in the future, and I'll make sure to get that on the schedule for you. And give the video a thumbs up, and remember to share the content so that I can keep bringing you new videos each week. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.